Well, hello to my Sunday school friends. Whether you're here in America or in Brazil or anywhere else around the world, it is good to see you, and I am glad that you have joined us. We're continuing to talk about King Saul, the first king of Israel. We've gone through the period of the judges, and now we're in the period of the kings, and Saul is at work trying to lead Israel to freedom from the Philistines. Remember, the Philistines are a group of peoples. They have 5 main cities. Each of those cities has a king. They have powerful warriors, and they've been in control of Israel for a while now, and Saul is trying to lead Israel in a fight for their freedom, but it's not going very well. The Philistines are much better armed. They're much better trained. There's more of them. The Israeli soldiers are afraid. Some of them are starting to drift away. Some of them are starting to hide. So Saul is in his camp. He has about 600 soldiers. The Philistines are in their camp, on a nearby hill. There's many more of them. And right now, there's just sort of a pause in the fighting. Well, Saul's son Jonathan decided that there shouldn't be a pause in the fighting, and he decided that he was going to go up and challenge the Philistines, and he figured that God can use a couple of soldiers as much as God could use a whole army, and that if it's God's will, that God could let Jonathan do something kind of cool and strike a blow for the freedom of Israel. So Jonathan and his armor bearer, right? That if you were an important soldier like a king or a prince, you would have someone working with you who would carry your armor and your weapons and help you and get you ready and all this. So Jonathan and his armor bearer started walking toward the Philistine camp. And Jonathan didn't have much of a plan, but he told the armor bearer, when we get to the camp, if the Philistine lookouts yell at us and say, stay down there, we'll come to you, then we know that God's not going to be with us and help us in this, and we should probably, at least stay there and maybe get out of there. But if they say to us, hey, come on up here, then we'll know that we're going with God and that God will use us. And the armor bearer said, well, okay, whatever you think, I'll go wherever you go. So Jonathan, the armor bearer, walked up to near the Philistine camp, and the Philistine lookout saw them and laughed at them. What are these two guys going to do? I mean, one of them's just a boy carrying the armor of the other. And they say, hey, come on up here. We have something to show you. And Jonathan and the armor bearer looked at each other and they smiled. That was the signal that God was going to be with them and help them. And they went up the hill and they were met by about 20 Philistines, and they started this huge fight where Jonathan and the armor bearer were defeating these 20 Philistine soldiers. And God sent an earthquake, and so there was the sound of battle and everything was shaking, and the other Philistines in the camp thought that a mighty army was coming that was making the ground shake, and they began to grab their weapons and they panicked and they went around, and some of them tripped and fell and some of them hurt each other. And the lookouts in Saul's camp, in the camp of Israel, looked and they saw all this activity in the Philistine camp, all this hubbub and commotion. And they said to Saul, there's something going on up there. Something is wrong in the camp of the Philistines. And Saul said, let's attack. And so he and his 600 men got their armor and got their weapons, and they headed into battle with those Philistines. And some of the men that had run away from the army, they saw and they heard, and they quickly grabbed their weapons and they rejoined. And people who were around, who wanted to be part of it, they joined in, and soon it was a rout. A rout means a total victory. And the Philistines were running away into the woods, and the armies of Israel were chasing them in all directions, catching them and killing them, so that they would no longer be the masters of Israel. And Saul made a rule. He said to all his soldiers, listen, don't even stop to eat. If anyone stops to eat, I'm going to take his life. This is a day to set Israel free. We're not going to be sitting around eating while there's battle to be done. So the men fought and fought and fought, and they got hungry and tired. It would have been so much smarter for Saul to let them eat a little bit, but they lost their strength, and many of the Philistines got away. Now, Jonathan wasn't around when his father Saul made that order. So as Jonathan was chasing through the woods, he came upon some wild honey, a beehive, and he took some of the wild honey and he ate it, and he was refreshed, and he went back into battle. And his men said, "Oh no, you weren't supposed to eat that." But he didn't know At any rate, some of the Philistines escaped. A lot of them escaped because of Saul's rule. And when Israel gathered again, Saul found out that his son Jonathan had broken his command and had eaten. And Saul said to him, I don't have any choice here. I said that anyone who eats is going to be killed, and that includes you. But the people of Israel said, wait 1 second there, king. Jonathan was the reason that we won the victory today. He should not be killed tonight. And the people clamored and they protested until finally Saul listened and Jonathan's life was spared. That's where we're going to pause. We still got a lot of Philistines around. Jonathan's okay. King Saul's got his army, and his army is feeling pretty good about themselves right now. That's where we'll pick up next week. You take care. I hope you're well. Study hard in school. Obey your parents. Work on being a good person so that God can use you and work through you and do mighty things through you. You take care. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.